On behalf of the conference, I wish to invite His Excellency Mr. Samuel Santos Lopez, Minister for Foreign Affairs for Nicaragua. Minister Lopez, the floor is yours, sir.
Buenas noches. Good evening to one and all, Mr. President, colleagues, and friends. I greet you on behalf of the people of Nicaragua and the Government of Reconciliation and National Unity, presided over by Comrade Commander Daniel Ortega. I speak to you as we unfurl the flag of hope in the conscience and human action in its immense capacity for transformation and its historic reserves, cultural, ethical, moral, with a firm conviction that we can, together, make of our Mother Earth the home for the future of humanity. Since 1960, when the Climate Commission of the WMO tackled the topic of greenhouse gases in its meeting, up until now, from 1960 until now, what have we actually achieved? How much progress have we made? There have been very few or very inefficient actions attributable to the lack of will and the mercantile cynicism of those who would prefer to bury the world in favor of their profits. As a result, it's obvious that the environmental crisis, climate change, and global warming are a historical consequence of the ways of production, of consumption, and pollution of the capitalist system, its egotism and its intrinsic greed. As a result, we have the resistance from the developed countries to adopt the measures that are necessary for such things as the prevention, the mitigation, and adaptation to global warming, and it has the same cause as the crisis, namely the lack of a political will to support their interests, even though this is the greatest challenge that has faced humanity over the course of its entire history, the very survival of humanity. There are investments that are designed based on the needs of the planet and humanity. And instead of doing this, it is only in terms of profits in the private sector that these investments are made. Also, there's an attempt to turn into a merchandise everything, including carbon. The idea, the concept of sinks, to have the right to continue to pollute, or the concept of cap and trade that would guarantee the opportunity for speculation and reduce the number of emission units on an annual basis. This would eventually possibly lead to derivatives of carbon and to a carbon bubble with great profits for the financial markets, but no benefit whatsoever for humanity in terms of overcoming the effects of global warming. In order to overcome this denial state which the developed countries live in, we require commitments that make it possible for us to make substantial progress in the reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions. This reduction, whose basic responsibility lies with the developed polluting countries, must fit within the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change and the Kyoto Protocol as the legally binding framework for commitments in this field, considering always the principle of shared, rather common but differentiated responsibilities, which must continue to be a pillar of any agreement which comes out of the current negotiations. Nicaragua, as a part of the Central American Biological Corridor, is already one of the countries that has been affected most by climate change. The growing frequency of the El Niño phenomenon associated with global warming leads to droughts in the coasts on the Pacific Ocean side and the regions which are the northern and central regions of the country. Our fishing industry is already beginning to be affected by the rise in the temperature of the seas and the acidification as a result of CO2. Our coral reefs, marine coral reefs, as is the case for coral reefs all over the world, are being destroyed by the increase in the temperatures. Over the course of the last few years, we have had extraordinary storms, including many hurricanes over the course of the last 3 years, with very serious damage to productive infrastructure and to the people. Our coasts will gradually be affected more intensively in the years to come. Many countries of the world suffer similar damage. In many cases, the damage that is suffered is irreversible. Nicaragua would like to alert everyone about the situation of the small island states and other highly affected countries that are, moreover, countries with lower incomes. The small island states and the low-lying lands of the developing countries are the first victims of the increase in the sea level rise, and the imminent phenomenon of environmental refugees. Sooner or later, all coastal states will be affected. As a member of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of the Americas, whose presidents and prime ministers issued the special communique on climate change at the 8th summit of the ALBA in Havana, Cuba, very recently, just on the 14th of December 2009, Nicaragua would like to inform COP15 about the following positions of the presidents and prime ministers of ALBA. Recognizing that in order to achieve the objective of stabilizing greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that will prevent a dangerous interference in the climate system, the Annex I countries must return to the concentrations of greenhouse gases well below 300 parts per million. The target being to get back to temperatures as soon as possible to levels that are pre-industrial levels. They stated that this climate debt includes both an obligation of emissions and an obligation of adaptation, which should be honored by the developed countries through the following. First of all, binding commitments for substantial domestic reductions and reabsorption of greenhouse gas emissions in such a way that the right to development of the developing countries is guaranteed. Number two, fulfilling their effective technology transfer commitments, ensuring that the technology should be accessible, affordable, and adaptable, and taking down all of the barriers associated with intellectual property rights so that the countries of the South can begin a development process that will not follow the patterns of production, consumption, and pollution of the North. Number three, fulfilling and guaranteeing in the effective provision of financial resources that are public, that are additional, that are adequate, that are predictable and sustainable, emphasizing that the requirements for the adaptation of developing countries have increased as a direct result of the climate crisis. In order to avoid a major climate catastrophe, the developed countries must provide 6% of their GDP to the developing countries, making a contribution which is measurable, reportable, and verifiable towards the total payment of their full payment of their climate debt.